In Sudan, there is a civil war that's going on between military and paramilitary. So the Indian nationals who've been stranded, India has started its evacuation process. Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy, as always, leading the Sudan rescue operations. MOS-MEA V. Muralidharan is monitoring the evacuation operations closely in Jeddah. Stranded Indian nationals, and I'm talking about at least 3,000 Indians who are currently in Sudan. One by one, they are being brought in batches to Jeddah first. Saudi Arabia is helping in the evacuation process, and Mantri personally welcoming the Indian nationals.
Indians stranded in Sudan has started. The Operation Kaveri, which was announced by the Prime Minister, today got initiated with the first batch of Indians, 278 people reaching by INS Sumedha in Jeddah port. Just after that, the C-130 Indian Air Force aircraft brought around 121 people who were stranded there. So the Operation Kaveri will continue till every Indian who wants to come back are brought back safely.
So let's try and get an understanding of what does this mean. Our managing editor Gaurav Sawant joins me this morning. Gaurav, good morning. Do tell us about how mega this operation could be. You know, to even land and to be in Port Sudan, then to head to Jeddah, this will take a lot of coordination process to do.
It indeed is taking a lot of coordination, and that is why Minister of State External Affairs Muralidharan is in Jeddah. Indian embassy officials are at Port Sudan and they are in Khartoum. Now, Port Sudan itself is about 800 kilometers from Khartoum, which is the center of the battle between the army and the paramilitary forces. But there is a 72-hour ceasefire that was announced, and several countries, including India, have been negotiating very hard. So the second C-120 has also landed in Jeddah with about 150 odd Indians on board. Two C-130J Super Hercules aircraft of the Indian Air Force. They are playing the role of an air bridge. INS Sumedha has brought in about 278 Indians. INS Steg has now pulled in. So there are two Indian warships, two Indian aircraft. Apart from that, you also have the French Air Force, which brought in some Indians. The Saudi Air Force brought in some Indians to Jeddah. So the closest to Port Sudan is Jeddah. So there's an air bridge that's been established. People are taking in buses from Khartoum to Port Sudan, 800 kilometers to the north of Khartoum, and then from there, via this air bridge and the ships, they are being rushed out. As many as they want to leave. Some apparently, so there is, we still need more clarity. Some either wanted to stay back or were not in a position to come back immediately. So 72 hours is this window, where all movement can take place from Khartoum to Port Sudan, and from Port Sudan then to Jeddah, and then onwards their journey back to India. So the Ministry of External Affairs is saying that they will make sure every Indian who wants to come back will be brought back safely to India, and that's the effort that's currently underway, along with the Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy that are a part of these operations.
Whether it's Gulf, whether it's Ukraine, it is always Indian Air Force and Navy that's leading operations. I request you to please stay on with me, Gaurav, because S. Jaishankar, a foreign minister, has also reacted on the evacuation process. Remember, approximately in total 500 Indians have been brought in, but there are many more still stranded. Here's what S. Jaishankar has to say.
हमारे नागरिक और हमारे मूल के लोग जो वहाँ सूडान में वहाँ लड़ाई में फंस गए थे, उनको हम उस संकट से कैसे बचाएं, कैसे भारत लौटाएं, कहीं और ले जाएं, ये मैं आपको कह सकता हूं कि नरेंद्र मोदी की सरकार जो है, आपके बारे में जो भावना जो रखती है, आपके बारे में जो अपनी कर्तव्य समझती, ये इसमें कभी हमारे साइड से कोई कमी नहीं है.
I want to go back to Gaurav Sawant on this. Gaurav, because you've been in Ukraine, you've also reported about earlier evacuation process. that India has done in several other countries. This time in Sudan, how different do you think this could be? And we are talking about two militaries fighting. What is the situation on the ground that you hear, and how difficult it is to even carry out an evacuation at this time?
It's an absolute logistical nightmare. I've been speaking to officers in the Ministry of External Affairs and in the Indian Navy and Air Force. But then, you know, what they're doing is they're coordinating very closely with the Indian community. They've asked everybody, all the Indians who want to come back, to be in touch with them. Buses are being used to bring them Khartoum. So imagine there was a shooting war that was on in Khartoum, a paucity of electricity, a paucity of water, a paucity of food, and fighting on the streets of Khartoum that was taking place. The apprehension was that this will now spread from Khartoum to Darfur to other parts of Sudan. It could also, you know, lead to a lot more trouble. One person also lost his life. In all, about close to 500 people have lost their lives, and more than 4,000 have been injured. To negotiate a ceasefire, to coordinate with countries like Saudi Arabia, Canada, United Kingdom, United States, Egypt, several other parts of the region. Sudan is the third largest African country, and Sudan is no stranger to coups, incidentally. There have been 6 successful coups and about 35 attempted coups in Sudan since 1956. So, India, of course, has very, very close ties with the leadership in Sudan.
Okay.
So, look, effort was made to bring people out as safely and as quickly as possible. What is also very significant here is to note that apart from Indian aircraft bringing back people, it also coordinated with Saudi Arabia and France. When their aircraft landed in Khartoum, they also brought back some Indian nationals. So there is a big international effort that is on to bring back as many Indians as they want to come back safely. First to Jeddah, establish this air bridge, bring them to Jeddah, and then from Jeddah back.
Can only imagine the coordination, you know, whether it's with regard to France, Saudi Arabia, where in Jeddah these aircraft or these warships are landing right now and are arriving. It must take a lot of logistical coordination to take place with other nations, but that's what Indian government is doing at this point. I want to thank Gaurav Sawant joining me this morning for a perspective. Remember, there is fighting on the streets right now. There's a civil war that's taking place in terms of militaries fighting each other, and in that, to bring Indians safely out of this country is not easy at all. We are being told third batch of about 121 Indians for now have been brought and are en route right now to Jeddah and then back home as well. Thank you so much, Gaurav Sawant. What does it mean to leave a country where there's battle taking place? You manage to leave your residence, find a safe location, get into either an INS warship or on the C-130J of the Indian Air Force. Hear from the woman, an elderly woman who's coming back safely due to the rescue operations. Listen in.
हमारी जो जान बचाई है हम सब बहुत थैंक यू बोलना चाहती हूँ हमारी जो जान बचाई है हम सब